Start where I left off there. We're holding this hearing virtually in compliance with the regulations for remote committee proceedings pursuant to House Resolution 965. Remote hearings certainly aren't the same as sitting together in our committee room, but this new authority has allowed us to continue to do our work on behalf of the American people while keeping our staff, family, and broader communities safe. This is the second official virtual subcommittee hearing in the Ways and Means Committee. As with our previous hearing, I want members to know that I plan to continue this committee's long tradition of collegiality and substantive debate, even as we conduct our business from afar. I will continue to work with our ranking member and his staff to ensure that the rights of all members are respected in this new virtual format. So before we turn to today's important topic, I want to remind members of a few procedures to help you navigate this new platform. First, consistent with regulations, the committee will keep microphones muted to limit background noise. Members are responsible for unmuting themselves when they seek recognition or when recognized for their 5 minutes. Second, members and witnesses must have their cameras on at all times. If you need for any reason to step away from the proceeding, please leave your camera on rather than logging out. Finally, we have several members who are waving on to the subcommittee for today's hearing. I'll recognize subcommittee members on a bipartisan basis in order of seniority, followed by off subcommittee members in order of seniority for questioning our witnesses. I thank you all for your continued patience as we navigate this technology in order to continue serving our country together in this great time of need. With that, I'll now turn to the important topic of today's hearing, the consequences of inaction on COVID tax legislation. Federal tax measures from the CARES Act and the Families First Coronavirus Response Act played a critically important role in sustaining workers and families during the COVID-19 pandemic. The economic impact payments, the Employee Retention Tax Credit, together with the supplemental federal unemployment insurance benefits, helped millions of families weather this year's economic catastrophe. Over the course of a few weeks this spring, more than 21 million jobs evaporated, and millions more were scaled back to fewer hours and less pay. Gig work dried up. Almost overnight, we went from the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years to the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression. From one end of the country to the other, people found themselves with no paychecks in the middle of a public crisis. Hitting the pavement to find a new job was not only risky, but mostly futile because the jobs just weren't there. In February, there were 8 unemployed workers for every 10 available jobs. In April, there were 46 unemployed workers for every 10 available jobs. People need help quickly, and I'm proud of how our Congress and the administration stepped up. We did our jobs. The EIPs and the Employee Retention Tax Credit played an indispensable role in helping Americans make it through the deepest economic catastrophe of our lives. They helped families feed their kids. They helped keep a roof over tens of millions of citizens' heads. They helped Americans continue to pay their bills while they were unable to work. Finally, the Job Retention Credit helped people hold on to their health insurance during a global pandemic. At the time we designed these measures, we didn't know for sure how deep this recession would be or how long it would last. There was a lot of optimism about a V-shaped recovery that would quickly bounce back to its previous high employment levels and steady growth. We know now that those hopes were overly optimistic. Instead of a V-shaped recovery, we're seeing a K-shaped recovery, with some sectors and groups recovering fast and others forced to wait, while getting worse off day by day. 94% of the jobs in financial services are back, but millions of people in hospitality, retail, manufacturing, and food service still have no work. People of color, women, and workers with less education are experiencing a much slower recovery than others. It's been 6 months since the pandemic struck the U.S. in earnest, and 6 weeks since the expanded unemployment benefits lapsed. Millions of families have exhausted their savings and their EIPs paying for necessities, food, housing, utilities, health insurance, and car payments. It is painfully clear that millions continue to struggle, and the hole they are in is getting deeper by the day. According to census data for July, 13 million adults couldn't pay their rent. 29 million adults, sometimes or often, didn't have enough to eat over the past week. And 1 in 3 kids did not get enough to eat because the household couldn't afford it. Think about that. 1 in 3 kids not getting enough to eat because their families can't afford to feed them. The economy was broken earlier this year, and we took extraordinary measures to try and protect families during the crisis. Well, millions of families and millions of children are still in crisis. That's why the House passed the HEROES Act on May 15th, approving a second round of EIPs and other support for struggling families. For 4 months, the Senate has done nothing to help these families. Today's hearing will examine the real-life consequences of this inaction. And with that, I'll recognize the ranking member, Mr. Smith of Nebraska, for the purpose of an opening statement. Mr.